Should you take Dianabol rectally? Stay tuned and find out. I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RXMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Whatever is on your mind, bodybuilding or non-bodybuilding. I'm your host, Steve Faruqi. So glad you could join us on this 19th day of June in the year 2024. Reminder, this weekend, Dave Palumbo, John Romano, Greg Valentino, Lee Priest, Jimmy the Bull, and myself will be down in Montgomery, Alabama, of all places. Yes, Montgomery, Alabama, for the first and perhaps the last Whack Pack meetup. It'll be after hours live. We're going to have a live show. We're figuring out if it's going to be live streamed or not, but we're going to do a live panel Friday night at the Body B1 Classic, NPC IFBB Body B1 Classic in Montgomery, Alabama. So we're going to have a live panel discussion with the Whack Pack and Lee Priest Friday night in Montgomery, Alabama. Then we're going to shoot all sorts of content around town. You never know what kind of adventures we're going to have. I think Dave is trying to set up an eating competition Friday night. And then, of course, Saturday is the actual Body B1 competition. But the guys are going to be around. So if you're going to be in the area, come by, say hello. We'd love to meet you. It's going to be a good time. And again, like I said, it's probably going to be the only time that you're going to have the collection of Dave, Lee Priest, Greg Valentino, Jimmy the Bull, John Romano, all in one place at the same time.
I'm already dreading it, Sid, because already the problems are starting. Because, you know, the Whack Pack are very high maintenance, in case anyone didn't know that. And so they don't like to travel to begin with. So it's like traveling with your 90-year-old father. You have to, like, account for everything. No one knows how to go through airport security. No one knows how to pack luggage. Well, at least they don't remember how to do it. They've done it in the past, obviously. No one knows how to get from the airport to the hotel. It's micromanagement central. I actually feel very bad for Michelle, who's having to take care of all these people and all these things. So hopefully we'll all make it. I'm going to be there really early tomorrow. So Lee is going to be there tonight, I think, actually. He gets in.
Really?
Yeah, he texted
He was in Nashville a few days ago, right?
No, he went back home, but then he was in LA earlier this morning, and then he has to go to Dallas then he's got to go to Alabama. He's got to Atlanta and then to Alabama. So he's got a couple more flights still. So I said, Lee, you got all this frequent flyer mileage. He goes, no, I don't even do frequent flyer. The dummy has traveled 1 million miles already this year, and he has no credit for it whatsoever. So
unbelievable. But like I said, it's going to be a lot of fun. And if you're happen to be in the Montgomery area, come by, say hello. Otherwise, we're going to have chock loads of content for you on the channel throughout the course of the weekend, and you never know what kind of adventures we're going to have, what kind of fun things we're going to put up. But it'll be fun. It'll be a good time, and we're very much looking forward to it. Again, shout out, Michelle. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you for bringing us all in this weekend. We look forward to it. It's going to be a great time. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. First question: if I'm cutting and already taking TRT, is it okay if I add a little Proviron for a small boost?
You know, people ask me the same question all the time. And I don't know what the thing is with Proviron. I guess people think Proviron's not very strong, but it's an oral. So it obviously has some toxicity to it. I mean, if you're going to add something to the stack, you might as well add something like, Masteron or, maybe some Anavar, something that Proviron has no anabolic qualities whatsoever. Theoretically, it's supposed to displace testosterone from the sex hormone binding globulins, making more available free testosterone. I don't ever see it on blood work. I don't see it translate at all. If you're going to add something that's going to give you a little boost, some Winstrol tabs or some Anavar tabs, or like I said, some Masteron, something like that, a small dose of that. At least you'll get a nice boost from that. You'll see a physique change. You're not going to notice anything from Proviron. So I think it's a big waste of time. And people just don't know, you know what I mean? And that's why, it's sometimes it's a little bit more readily available, like on the gray market. So a lot of people think, well, I can get it. Let me see if I can use it. It might do something, but very infrequently does it do anything.
Second question, again, these first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. I'm glad he asked this because we do get this question pre-contest fairly often, and it's about preserving leg size while dieting. Says that they always flatten out during the course of the week. We do get a lot of questions, Dave's, relative to this about forms of cardio that aren't going to strip muscle off your legs. So your advice to preserve leg size while dieting?
Well, first of all, don't do cardio that taxes the legs too much. So in other words, if you're on that stepper and going like a maniac on that thing, you're going to burn muscle. There's no doubt about it. Same thing on the Stairmaster. And there's a couple others. If you're riding the bike or you're doing anything with high tension or high incline, like on a treadmill, you're not training for a marathon. You're not training for a triathlon. You're training for a physique competition. You want to burn fat. You don't want to break down your legs. You're not going to spot reduce fat on your legs if you feel it burning in your glutes and hamstrings more. That just means that you're breaking down muscle and you're creating lactic acid production. And guess what? Lactic acid is not produced when you're oxidizing fats. Okay, it's produced when you're using glucose as a fuel source. And if you're using glucose, you're not burning fat. So I hate to break it to you, that burning feeling is not a good feeling that you should be getting. It's giving you it's telling you that you're using the wrong fuel source during your cardio. So don't do that. Now, some guys their legs go flat the week of the show. I think that's what he's asking. And in that case, once again, you might not be filling up enough. A lot of times when guys start carbing up, they cut back the fats in their diet, or they may even cut the protein back. And so calorically, they're not eating enough fuel. So what happens is all those carbs they're eating are getting used for energy, and they're not getting stored as glycogen. So you need to keep your protein stable, and you need to keep your fat stable, because you don't want your body to start dipping into the carbs as a fuel source. And it's weird. You think, well, the last 2 days before a show, I'm not doing anything. I'm not even training. I don't need as much energy. Yes, you do, because once you start putting that extra carbs and fuel into your carb up, your metabolism speeds up. So now your fuel requirements are higher than when they were prior when you were dieting, because your body was trying to conserve fuel then. So I know it sounds weird, but you actually need more food when you're actually carbing up, a lot more food than you would think in certain cases. Now, there are certain people that can look at 1 cup of rice and they're full, but there are people that if you're telling me your legs are getting flat, it's probably because you're either cutting back your protein, you're cutting back your fat, or both. And you're not, while you're carbing up, and that's just, that's flattening you out. So, and don't restrict salt, and don't start taking diuretics too early. These are all mistakes. Now, these are good questions. These questions come from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. That's the app I have on Android and iTunes platforms. You can download them. It's $29 a month. You get me as your coach in your back pocket. You get all my videos I've ever done, all my articles I've ever written, all my protocols, pre-contest. The keto diet is in there. My off-season diets are in there. We put up a workout every week. I do a Q&A for everyone in an open forum, so everyone sees everyone's questions and everyone's answers. And they do an extra Q&A video that you don't see on our YouTube channel, only on the app every single week for the app members. So it's a lot of value. It's a big learning experience. And I have to thank you guys, because we have every single week we increase the members and the numbers. And you know what? People love it. It's a great experience. People get all their questions answered. And like I said, for $29 a month, you can't go wrong with that. And thanks for all the support.
Let's take some questions from our Facebook and Instagram pages. On Facebook, if you're not already following us, just go into the search bar, type in RX Muscle. On Instagram, official_RX Muscle. Syed M. Shah. How did you make your shakes to build size? And I guess your general thoughts on mass gainers. But I guess what will be more interest to the audience would be the shakes that you would build yourself, concoctions to gain size.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I dated this girl when I was in medical school, and I was just really getting into bodybuilding, like, getting super obsessed with it. And she was anorexic. She didn't eat. She would eat maybe a half a meal a day. And, if you hang out with the person all day and they don't eat, or they don't want to go any place to eat, or they don't make they have no food in their house, you can starve as a bodybuilder. So what I would, back in the early 90s, they had these shakes. They came in like a bottle. You would just pop the top off. There was powder in there. You'd add water and shake it up. They were called Perfect 1100s. They were 1,100 calories. And it was like about 50 grams of protein. There was there was some fat in there, but it was mostly sugary carbs, that kind of stuff. And they put it this way, you would think they would taste good because it was like cake batter in there. But it was so sweet because there was so much. There was probably, who knows, like 150 grams of carbs in there for all I know. There was so many carbs in there that it was like nauseating almost. And I would just literally shake them up and I'd guzzle it down. And I would do that like 3 times, every 2-3 hours I was with her, because otherwise we didn't eat. I didn't eat. And I didn't want to lose, muscle. So I used to do those all the time. They killed my stomach. But you know what? It was better than not eating. So then once I got into, really becoming a real bodybuilder and, competing, and I realized that I couldn't eat enough food, I had to, create a way to drink the food. And tuna in a shake was intolerable for me. And I could swallow anything, but it was disgusting. I'm like, there's no reason to do this. So, and I've given these shake. I've given this story a million times before, but I would put 12 whole eggs in a blender. I would actually heat them up in the microwave first, because I was paranoid about salmonella, which made it even more disgusting. And I would add a cup of uncooked oatmeal in there, which really, in hindsight, probably wasn't the best thing, because it kind of rips up your butt when you're pooping it out later in the day. But I throw that in there. I put a cup of like apple juice. I put like a packet of Metrex in there, which is about 40 grams of protein and some carbs in there. And I would blend this stuff up, and it would blend to the point of like, it was like spackle. It looked like that was the consistency. And I couldn't even put the top in the blender. And I've told the story a million times. So I'm not losing. I'm not like Greg Valentino. I'm not losing my mind. And I would fill it up, and the thing would be blending, and it would literally almost be coming over the top. And I turned the blender off, and I would literally grab the blender, because you couldn't pour this in a cup, because it was huge, this thing. And I would guzzle the whole thing down. And I would do that like twice a day. It was called my super shakes, I called them. And if you didn't just kind of like lean over the sink for about 20 minutes after you drank that, there's a very good chance you would throw them up, because it was just too much volume and it was too thick. But I learned to keep them down 95% of the time. If I threw it up, I would remake the shake and drink it again. And I did that for many years when I was like over 315, because I couldn't hold that weight any other way. I mean, that was a lot of protein, a lot of carbs, a lot of fat in there. Think about 12 whole eggs. But it was easy to get it down, because I can swallow anything. And so if you have that ability to drink large amounts of fluid and it doesn't bother you, shakes can definitely help you gain weight for sure.
Flex Training, Jim, your thoughts on people doing the keto diet while using Ozempic?
Yeah, I mean, you can use any diet you want. What Ozempic does, and I've explained this before, but it's worth repeating, because a lot of people are asking questions. My friend Mike Popkin, who I went to visit the other day, was asking questions about it. I said, stop eating. I said, you eat fast food 3 times a day. That's why you're fat. I said Ozempic's not going to help that. Ozempic is a GLP-1 agonist. It's like glucagon-like peptide 1, which is something that's naturally released, when you eat food. So when the gut is stretched, you release this GLP-1. It tells your brain you're not hungry. It slows your digestive tract down. By taking an analog of it called semaglutide, in the Ozempic form, tirzepatide, which is the Mounjaro form of it, it mimics that. So it slows your digestive tract and it makes you feel full longer. So if you eat your meal you're not going to feel hungry an hour later like you normally would. It might take you 3 hours later to feel hungry. Now, in bodybuilders who eat, 5-6 times a day, it's great because you eat your meal, you're good between meals, you're not hungry, and then the next meal comes and you're ready to eat again. If you want to do a ketogenic diet, that's fine. If you want to do a diet that's like some carbs but low in carbs, it doesn't matter what your diet is. But when you take these GLP-1 agonists, you must. I tell everyone you should take a fiber supplement anyway, but you have to take one with this because if you don't, you will not poop and you'll get impacted and you might wind up in the hospital, having to get, some surgery to unstick your colon. Okay. So you need a fiber supplement that's going to push the food through and make sure it goes through, and gets out of your body because you can get backed up on these drugs. Now, other than that, they're pretty safe. Now you see these Hollywood people who take these drugs, they just don't eat at all. They eat like once a day and they lose weight, but they lose muscle and they lose fat and they look terrible. So they get that like skeletal look to their face because they're losing all their lean mass. And we know when you lower lean mass, you lower your metabolism. So for a physique athlete, that would be ridiculous to do, to not eat at all. For these Hollywood people, they don't give a shit. They just want to be skinny for so when they go on the red carpet, people are not calling them fatties. But there is a place for it, but you have to understand the limitations. Once again, you need to take a fiber supplement twice a day, like Fiberlize. You do need to eat, and you need to make sure, even if you're not hungry, that you do eat, because if you miss meals, you will lose muscle. It's not the drug that causes the muscle loss. It's the fact that you're not eating. That's what does it.
Let's go to Andrew Apuzzo. When testing testosterone levels, what's more important, total T or free T?
It's a loaded question. I'll tell you why. And I've studied this for a while. I was just explaining this to someone the other day. When you're natural, okay, and your body produces natural testosterone, let's say your levels are at 600 or something like that, and then you have a free testosterone, maybe it's like 100 something. It's really a percentage of your total that is your free, and that's what your body can utilize, okay? And then you have your sex hormone binding globulin levels, which are how much of the testosterone is inactivated, that you make. So, the lower the sex hormone binding globulin, theoretically, the more that's free and available, the better you'll grow. Unfortunately, most of these little ratios are all genetically determined, meaning, in my body, my testosterone might be 600 total, but I might have a much greater free testosterone that's utilized for building and repairing muscle. And I might have a much lower sex hormone binding globulin genetically. And that's why I respond better. Lavroni, all these guys that just are hyper responders. Now you throw in anabolics now, or even just to replace a hormone replacement dose, the level in your bloodstream is so much higher. So even if your total, let's say, goes up to 1200, like mine does, I take 100 milligrams of testosterone a week, I have a 1200, total testosterone. I don't know why it goes so high, because my body just utilizes testosterone better than other people do. Just like I'm sure you'll give Lavroni 100 milligrams, he probably put on 30 pounds of muscle. So now when you look at the free testosterone levels, okay, it might be the exact same thing it was when you were at 200, a testosterone 200. So it might still see 100, your free testosterone. So people think, well, that means I have the same amount of testosterone that's available for building. No, because it's a percentage of what your total is. So if my total is double what it was before, okay, and my free is the same, I have double the potential to build muscle now. Theoretically, it might even be more than that. Likewise, the sex hormone binding globulin might go up a little bit, but it's still, I have so much more available than I had before because I'm exogenously injecting that I'm going to grow fine. So the total free and sex hormone binding globulin is not that accurate when we talk about exogenous sources of testosterone, whether it be TRT or an actually full-blown cycle. Once I see people on the only reason we use total testosterone for people who are on cycles is to see if their testosterone is actually real. Because I know guys that are on 1,000 milligrams a week, they go get a test and their total testosterone is 400. And they're like, how's that possible? I'm like, well, because your testosterone is probably fake. Okay, so don't worry so much about the free and the sex hormone binding globulin when you're on a cycle or you're on HRT. That's more relevant when you're just natural. Okay, I hope that differentiates it for you, because people get very hung up on those numbers, which are really irrelevant once you're on an exogenous source of it.
We talk about the Roy test and testing your steroids, testing GH. Is there any sort of testing mechanism for SARMs? That's what Daniel Bowles wants to know. Do you think SARMs could be detected on any test that exists or may exist?
There's no SARM detection test at this point that Bill has created. That's one of the reasons why if people tell me, oh, I'm going to take SARMs, I'm like, you know what? If you're going to go the SARMs route, you might as well just take some real testosterone replacement or something like that, or some Anavar. At least you know the stuff works. You can test it to see if it's real. It has reproducible results. I mean, most people don't take steroids because they just don't want to take steroids. But if you're gonna rationalize in your head that I'll take SARMs, it's the same thing. I mean, you might as well just take Anavar at that point. You know, it's either if you're going to do something that's not, quote, legal, then you might as well just do something that we know reproducibly works well. Because the strongest SARM is way, way weaker than the weakest anabolic steroid, which is Anavar. So if you took 30 milligrams a day of Anavar, it would be way stronger than the strongest SARM you can possibly use. So there's no reason to use them. And because you can't validate that you actually are taking them, why bother? It's a waste.
Raw muscle glutes. Your take on using orals rectally. I've seen some guys say that they insert D-bol pre-workout as a way to bypass liver metabolism. Any experience with that? I guess to add to that, any thoughts on that?
I personally do not have any experience. I have not stuck any anabolic orals up my butt. I'm sure if you wanted to do an experiment, Greg Valentino would be more than happy to volunteer for that project. To be honest with you, these orals are made that way they are because they're very effective orally. Okay, whether they produce a little extra toxicity or not is irrelevant. It's not excessive, and they are available. I mean, orally. And they work really well orally. Now, there are injectable forms of Dianabol that I've used in the past that I thought worked amazing. I just don't know if you can reproducibly stick something up your butt and assume that you're going to absorb the whole pill, that it's going to break down and you're going to absorb it all. There's a good chance that, especially if you're Greg Valentino, that you might actually shit the whole thing out of you, the pill and everything. So I probably would not do that experiment. I would probably rather see you find an injectable form of D-bol if you're worried about oral metabolism and maybe creating liver toxicity as opposed to, taking the oral pills. But for most people who take Dianabol, they're only taking it for 4 weeks anyway. It's not going to be, or 4 to 6 weeks. It's not very toxic in 4 to 6 week doses. If you took it all year round, different story.
Stevie Swole, have you ever done a peak week carb up with insulin yourself? If so, what did that look like specifically for you since you were a 300 pounder? Did you look better peaking with insulin or without?
When I was using insulin off season, I used it pre-contest too, because I looked really well on it. Because we didn't test blood sugars back then. So I probably ran high blood sugars because I ate a lot of carbs, in the off season. And so pre-contest, I would just stay on the insulin protocol. I would lower it a little bit, but I would stay on it. I was doing at the time, Humulin R was available at the pharmacy without a prescription. Now it's called Novulin R. It's the same thing. It's like a semi-fast acting. So you get 2 peaks. So if you take 10 units in the morning, you get 5 units are released immediately. And then 2 hours later, another 5 units are released. So I would do 2 shots of that per day, essentially. I do 10 in the morning. And then 6 hours later, I would do another 8. And that was pretty much my protocol. And, when I would carb up, I would continue doing it. And I definitely looked fuller. I think I had nice fullness and roundness, but at some point it started to, I think, affect my midsection a little bit. And I didn't like the way it was looking. So I stopped doing it. And I stopped eating as many carbs at a certain point in my prep day. When I started adding a lot more fats to my diet, I wasn't doing as many carbs. And I didn't feel like I felt like my carb absorption was pretty good. Once again, I never tested blood sugar. So I never knew what my blood sugars were, but I just noticed when I wasn't eating an exorbitant amount of carbs like I was earlier in my career, because I wanted to be 315 pounds, I noticed that I carved up okay, and my midsection looked better. So for me, it didn't work. I don't like to use insulin carbing. I don't like to carb guys up with insulin who are my clients because I feel like it just adds like a watery look to them. Now, some people are just flat. They're just so flat all the time. They absolutely need it. And then some people that I work with actually have high blood sugars, and they need it to maintain blood sugar. If your blood sugar is not going high, then your body's producing enough insulin to absorb it. If you're running high blood sugars, especially fasting, then you're not absorbing your food, in which case you might want to do a long-acting, because long-actings are a little more forgiving. You take a long-acting and you forget about it. It lowers the blood sugar, but it's not giving you these highs and lows because it doesn't act quickly. So lately, I am much more akin to using the long-acting insulins like Lantus and Tresiba and Toujeo and some of the other ones, Novolin, and because they seem to be a little, like I said, you don't. If you go a little too much, it doesn't really matter because it's kind of working in the background and it's helping your body. If you do a little too much, usually your body just won't produce as much of its own. Whereas if you take a fast-acting insulin, you do too much, your blood sugar is going low, and you're going to have to then overcompensate. And the problem with that is a lot of guys will overeat, and then they wake up the next morning and they look terrible. So you can make mistakes with the fast-acting, and that's why I don't like to risk it the last week before a show.
Let's go to NY Bigger. If having high fasting blood sugars causes deposits throughout your body, another question about keto, will going on a keto diet reverse or deplete those deposits?
I think he's saying that he's asking if his fasting blood sugars will be fixed by the insulin.
No, by going on a keto. Right. Yeah. By the deposits caused by the high fasting blood sugar.
Oh, you mean the stuff, the damage that's been done in the past? I think that's what he's asking about. So I think what he's asking is if someone has been running high blood sugars for a while and they got side effects from it, which would be deposits of sugar in the extremities and the kidneys, eyes, could that be reversed by doing a ketogenic diet? No, because the problem is the ketogenic diet is not It's, in other words, just because just because you're not eating a lot of carbs and your blood sugars may be normal, it's not going to extract what the damage that has been done to those organs or to the eyes or whatever. So you can't reverse that. You can just stop it from occurring. Now, the good thing is that the accumulation of these, sugars, I guess you could say, in the extremities, in the eyes and stuff like that, in the organs, happens very, very slowly. Okay, so it takes a long time to accumulate enough, damage where you're not going to be able to see well, or you're not going to be able to, kidneys won't function well. We're talking about type 1 diabetics would take 20 years before they lose their kidneys if they don't control their blood sugar. However, the accumulation that occurs in the brain can slowly start killing off the neurons, and that's not good. So over the long term, before you realize you have dementia from that, you've already killed off, probably half your neurons in your brain. So we don't want to do that. We definitely don't want to do that. So getting control of your blood sugars early, when you first notice them, in other words, you're waking up in the morning, your fasting blood sugar is 99, it's 100, 101, 110. This is an indication that my body's not producing enough insulin. I better start taking some supplemental insulin so that long-term I don't accumulate side effects. Whatever little micro side effects you might have had are probably irrelevant at this point. It's not till you have it. Like if someone came to me and said, look, I've been diabetic for 20 years and I'm losing my vision and my kidneys is failing. You're not reversing that. You might stop it, but you're not reversing it. So the key is early detection.
Let's take another one from NY Bigger. Do you know of a way to reduce lactic acid buildup during certain aerobic exercises? I like cycling from time to time, but the lactic acid burn kills me. Also, jumping rope creates an intense shoulder burn within 30 seconds.
Yeah. Well, taking a good pre-workout that has a lot of beta-alanine in it, that neutralizes the acidic nature of the muscle. So beta-alanine, turns into carnosine in the muscle, which neutralizes the acidity and then helps you train longer without getting that burning feeling. So that's why a lot of these pre-workouts that are very high in beta-alanine, Stimulize was that way. We're reformulating now, but when we come out with the new version, it's going to have even more beta-alanine in it. And just because of that, it does reduce that. Now, some people had, tried the cheap method of taking like baking soda before they train. And baking soda will neutralize acidity too. Problem is it's not good for you. It's not good for your stomach. It can be toxic to your body. You take too much of it, it messes up your electrolytes. So I don't recommend doing that. But the beta-alanine is a really good way to do that for sure.
Let's go to Alexander Ruin. Coach, is it true that Equipoise takes 6 weeks or longer to kick in, or is that another quote unquote TikTok study going around?
Everything kicks in right away. It's just a matter of how long it takes to build to levels that are actually going to do something. So you take a shot at Equipoise, it's a long acting. It's certainly not longer acting than DECA. So most of the long-acting injectables like Cypionate, Enanthate, Boldenone, and what was the one I just said? Deca, Durabolin, are longer acting, and usually the onset of action is about 3 weeks. So after that, the third week after you're on it is when you really start feeling it. That's my experience. Now, people say, well, can't I take something that's going to make me start feeling something quicker? Well, think about it. If you're taking a drug that takes 3 weeks before you start feeling it because it's long acting, that means that when the cycle stops, you're going to get an additional 3 weeks of benefit from it because the stuff is still going to be in your system. So you're not losing 3 weeks. You're just getting it on the back end, if that makes sense. So don't get all paranoid about that. There's nothing wrong with having a long acting. So it takes another week or so to kick in. Every cycle I've ever done, even when I took a short acting compound like Winstrol, you never feel it right away. It always takes 2 to 3 weeks for you really start to see some results and feel some differences. Because remember, steroids increase red blood cells. That takes a while. Once you build more red blood cells, you get better pumps. You know your veins are popping out more. So the whole process, even when you're taking a fast acting versus a short acting, a fast acting versus a long acting, it's going to take about 2 to 3 weeks to build up in your system to the point where you're feeling it and getting benefits in the gym. But the benefits are starting from the first day you take that shot. You just don't realize it.
You know, we have often gotten questions over the course of your time at RX Muscle about your first cycle. And obviously you would talk about, you know, the changes that you saw in your body, so how you felt. Ari Givany wants to know the results, but let's take us through your recollections after your first few test shots.
Well, testosterone wasn't my first cycle. My first cycle was Winstrol and Primobolan. And what happened was, whatever physique I had at that point, I think I was like about 218 or something like that. I probably put on about 15 pounds of muscle, but it looked like I added about 25 pounds of muscle because I was so lean already. And what happens to me is my body like undergoes a change. If you're very lean and you take a cycle, it can be the smallest cycle. I mean, I'm taking 100 milligrams of testosterone right now. And if you see, I mean, I have a lot of I get veiny right away. So when you're in the gym and you get pumped up with all those veins, people think you're on a million milligrams of stuff because they can't believe, the vascularity and everything. But a lot of that's genetic, obviously. And then I'm also, like I said, I have no body fat on me. So you see it a little more obviously. Whereas if someone has a lot of body fat and they go on like some Anavar and some Primobolan or some Anavar and some Winstrol, something like that, and they gain 10 solid pounds of muscle, it might just look worse actually on them because it's covered by the fat and no one can even tell and they can't tell. So I think that, people were thinking that I was taking like massive amounts of drugs when I first started my cycles, and it wasn't. I just got really pumped. Probably had a lot more red blood cells in my system. My veins were crazy when I would get a pump in the gym, and it just made what I had look better. And granted, I grew. I probably put 8 or 9, 10 pounds of muscle on that first 12-week cycle, and that was obviously significant considering I was kind of stuck and couldn't gain any more muscle naturally. But it wasn't like anything exorbitant. And I think that once again, how you look after you do your first cycle is really relevant genetically to yourself. And like I said, I can go eat McDonald's. I could eat, 2 or 3 double cheeseburgers and a fries. And you'll think I just took, 5 Anadrols, and you'll be like, what the hell, what's going on? You look like your arms just grew 2 inches. And it's just a sodium effect on my body, but because I'm lean. And so you see lean guys look freakier when they do extreme things to their bodies because there's nothing obscuring the muscle. And you have to understand that. So you have to be very patient when you do cycles because things don't happen quickly. It's a gradual effect. So you have to think long-term. Don't even look in the mirror. Just say, okay, I'm going to make sure I get all my meals in. I'm going to do my workouts. I'm going to sleep enough. And I'm going to trust in the process that I'm going to build this muscle, even though I can't see it every day on myself. And some days I look good and some days I look like shit. It doesn't matter. I know that I'm growing. The scale's moving up. It's small, but it's incrementally moving up. It wasn't moving before. And if I keep doing this day in and day out, I'm in 16 weeks, 18 weeks from now, I'm going to be a different bodybuilder. And that's the mentality you need when you do a cycle.
Take one more question. We'll take a philosophical one. We like those on this show, and it's from the mayor of bodybuilding. Great guy.
Wow.
Someone that we love seeing at these big shows.
Yeah,
Always a fixture.
absolutely.
Yeah, on the big show circuit, as we like to call it.
Yeah.
Your favorite, it's a loaded question. Your favorite and least favorite aspect of bodybuilding. So I don't know if he wants to talk about you as a competitor or when you look at the landscape of bodybuilding, what's your favorite and least aspects of bodybuilding?
What did he? This is a homework assignment, Seth Garrett. I think the camaraderie is the best part. I used to love back in the days to go and travel to different gyms and train. Like sometimes on Saturday mornings, I would drive over to Strong and Shapely gym, Bob Bonham's gym in Jersey, and I'd work out and I'd hang out with all those Jersey guys, and we'd all shoot the shit and train and spot each other, go out to eat after. You know, I'd go out to Venice Gold's gym and I'd hang out with those guys out there. And I loved the camaraderie was great. I mean, sometimes I would meet people at Bev's gym from Jersey would come in, guys would come in from Delaware. They would just drive up and we'd all just hang out for the day. I remember back in the day, Mike Morris used to drive from, I think, was he in Delaware? I think he was in Delaware or Delaware, Pennsylvania. He would drive up and just meet me, and we would just hang out, and we'd have like lunch together, you know, and just talk about bodybuilding. It was crazy. And that, I think, is the greatest part of bodybuilding, because we're all interested in the same thing. How can we build muscle? How can we look our best? What supplements can we take? What diet, protocols work? That's just the fun part. It's just hanging out with people that have the same interests as you do. Probably the crappy part is that, not everyone's going to win a show. And I think we all think in the back of our head somewhere when we start this process that we're going to be Mr. Olympia at some point. And there's a grim reality that most of us are not going to be Mr. Olympia. And a lot of us are not even going to be pro bodybuilders for that matter. Even though we're going to give 100% to this process and we're going to dedicate our life to it and we're going to put our bodies on the line for it, it's not going to be there. So you have to really love what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll be greatly disappointed. And I think, yes, are there politics in bodybuilding? Of course there is. There's politics in anything that gets subjectively judged by a bunch of people, because some people like certain looks over other looks, and that's just the way it goes, So it sucks about bodybuilding, but if you understand that it's a beauty contest at the end of the day, and it's not a race, who's the fastest, then you'll accept it. And if you love the sport enough, you won't care necessarily about the aspects of the sport that are not necessarily, something that can be subjectively, judged by who crosses the finish line first. That's frustrating for bodybuilders because they get off stage, they know they brought their best. They couldn't do anything better, and yet they still didn't win. And maybe the crowd thinks they should have won, and social media thinks they should have won, but they didn't. And they have to accept that. And that's the worst part of it, because you have to learn to be a good loser. And a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people just can't deal with losing. And they don't like it. And when they do lose and they think that they shouldn't have, it makes them want to quit. But I'm of the belief if you really love what you're doing, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, because you're doing what you love. And you don't have to be a winner in bodybuilding to make a good living from this sport. I proved that, right? I never turned pro. I never won the Olympia or any pro shows for that matter. I never won the Nationals or the USA. But I made a very good living. I'm still making a very good living from the sport, and I enjoy what I do. So you have to find your niche in what you're doing here and accept that, and not be bitter about it, or you're going to be one of these guys like, Casey Viator or Mike Menser, who allowed the fact that they didn't win an Olympia because they thought it was politically motivated, ruin their whole life. And that's just not acceptable. So make sure you understand what you're getting involved with when you get into bodybuilding.
And that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Reminder, again, Friday night, Montgomery, Alabama, we're going to be having our Whack Pack panel. We are, Dave, do you think we should try to do this as a live broadcast on the channel, or should we?
I don't see why not. I think we could we can probably hook it up through StreamYard and just put a camera on there. Tyler could, do the camera.
By the way, so yeah, Tyler, the creator, is going to be there. Yes. So.
I can't believe everyone's there. I actually miss Tyler, because remember, Tyler worked with me in the office, 3 or 4 days a week, and so I used to see him all the time. And then he moved up to Tallahassee, and we really, we'll chat on the phone occasionally, but I really don't get a chance to spend any time with them. So for me, this is probably even better, more special than the other guys. Although the other guys have never, a lot of them haven't even met him. I know Lee hasn't met Tyler, right?
No, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, who I've never met in person, who I've actually never shaken. Romano. I've never met Romano in person.
All right.
Yeah. So you're going to get that. You're going to get Tyler meeting everybody for the first time. You're going to get to see him for the first time in a month.
And we have a special mystery guest just driving down. So driving up, I should say. I don't want to tell anyone who it is, though.
No, but again, it's going to be a lot of fun. So I think that's what we're going to aim to do. So keep an eye out for that. Sure. So around, say, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard, again, assuming that you're not going to be in Montgomery, Alabama.
7:30. Yeah.
So 7:30. Okay. So 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, you know what? It'll be. Oh, wait. It's Alabama's an hour behind.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're an hour behind. So
it'll be 6:30. Yeah.
So. 6:30 p.m.
Oh no,
6:30 p.m.
Oh
my God, I'm losing my mind right now. 8:30. Yes.
8:30. Sorry.
8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will do the live Whack Pack panel. We'll do it live on the channel. So keep an eye out for that. We'll try to set up the broadcast so you'll have a reminder notification that we will be going live. So it'll be Dave, it'll be Lee Priest, Jimmy the Bull, Greg Valentino, John Romano.
By the way, Greg Valentino will be giving free enemas out after the press conference is over. So if you guys want to come, get an enema from Greg to clean yourself out, he's happy to oblige, he said.
He'll be very happy for a small fee, but he'll be very happy to do so.
For tips. He's only working for tips this weekend. And Lee, by the way, if you give Lee any tips, I collect them because Lee's already been bought out. He doesn't get any tips from us. So.
You might get a small residual, but we can discuss that contractually later on. If you like what you're watching, hit the like button, comment below. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you won't miss this upcoming live Whack Pack panel and everything else we're going to have undoubtedly from Montgomery, Alabama, all the behind the scenes stuff, all the crazy stuff we're going to do around town, eating contest, and God knows whatever else we're going to have going on. Then, of course, when we return back to New York / Florida for Dave, and we get back to normal bodybuilding stuff, same deal. You're not going to want to miss anything we have going up on this channel. So subscribe below, hit the notification bell. That way you will make sure to see everything that we have going up on the channel. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.